Hi there, this is Andy Berryman, and I am recording a screen capture to aid my blogging for my third year digital media project, which is the Specialist project. To take you through my steps, first of all, I have my footage in here of various billboards that I've filmed, which are explained earlier in my blog. I've gone out and filmed various bus stops that I'm hoping to track graphics and animation onto. Now, the first quick little bite of info that I want to give you is my progress with tracking, which I've opened up here. So far, I haven't worked on the animation, I've been working purely on the tracking. But what I've done is I've taken my original footage, which is quite a shaky piece here. In fact, it's the shakiest piece that I have that I'm working with currently. So I thought if it will work with this, it's going to work with all of them. Okay, and what I've done is I've used the 3D camera tracker effect to track a null object onto the bus stop, which is right here. This is the area that I'm interested in working on. And what I've done is simply created a solid. I've used a mask so the solid is the same size as the bus stop, and then I've just added the word buses over it, just in order to test if I can track motion onto this effectively. So just to cycle through, you can see the blue kind of teal area tracks nicely to the bus stop as it goes through, and with the 3D camera tracker helps me to not only keep it focused in a two-dimensional kind of format, but in 3 dimensions. So that's the end of my first little soundbite, and I'll be doing a series of these to hopefully speed up the blogging process of my Specialist project. Thanks. Okay, Andy B again with another quick update on my Specialist project. When I left off last time, all I had was a simple solid going over the front of this bus stop here, which is what my whole project is themed around, and this is my progress. You see now as it tracks through, it also freezes over. So we have a texture in front, the text behind becomes blurred out, and it basically creates this kind of frosted effect, which again is still tracked so that it looks realistic with the camera movements. And the next stage from here that I want to experiment with is perhaps exploding the ice out to reveal a different message. Here it says a seriously great range of pay-as-you-go smartphones. I think I might have some text exploding out towards the camera, perhaps saying, you know, can money buy happiness, or some kind of short message to try and make people think along those lines. The way that I've moved forward with this work is just to use a few different layers tracked in the same way as my solid before. I've made a short pre-comp here, which I've called Icy, which basically just is made up of this texture here, layered up, various effects onto it to give it, you know, a little bit of depth, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. And then I've just put that pre-comp into my original comp, tracked it, added a few other little bits and pieces to try and make it look realistic. For example, I've just added a solid here that fades to black, so on its own it doesn't look like much, but perhaps it'll be easier to see with this. That basically just takes down the, see it goes slightly blue, because I think that if the ice is supposed to be growing over it, then everything behind it should look slightly darker. And then just another couple of things there. The blurring right here is just again to try and give the ice a little bit more realism. So I'll be using a various style of animation over the 5 different locations that I've filmed. I intend this animation to be non-diegetic, if you like. So I mean, it's got no kind of grounding in reality. It really is just for the benefit of the viewer. So the animation style won't necessarily be consistent, but I would like it if all of them could try and follow this general kind of quality that I've achieved here. Okay, more in the next update. Little additional extra to the bit of an explanation that I just showed. I noticed that this billboard here actually reflects onto the glass. So what I've just done a minute ago was just play around with the idea of actually reflecting my first comp onto the glass. So let's try and find a really obvious bit, like this 3-bit here. You'll see everything's actually reflected back onto this little bit of glass, which again I've just done by making a mask around it and tracking it in the same way and just reversing everything. I think this would work, and I'm relatively happy with it, were it not for the fact that you can still see the original image underneath. So if we get rid of this, you can see what was the original billboard, Whereas if I put this layer back up that I've made, you can see it's now got the bear over it. Obviously the way to stop that would be to take the opacity up to 100%, but that I feel kind of it doesn't fit with everything else. It's not diegetic compared to the rest of the scene. You know, obviously you've got some faint reflections here, and then this just looks horribly out of place. I've tried it around at different kind of levels, but it just doesn't really work. So my final decision has been to just scrap that and just leave it as is, because although you could say yes, it doesn't reflect onto the glass, I think that by not addressing it, it keeps attention away from it. I think doing a bad job of trying to fix it would be a lot worse than leaving it out, and then you could even argue that it's not really supposed to be there. The audience's focus is just supposed to be on what the kind of message of the billboard is, and not necessarily making a film realistic kind of sequence. So that's just another little bit that I felt I should add on. Thanks. Hi there, so I've got another billboard to explain to you. This one is an advert for Three, the mobile phone company. It plays through like so. Okay, so just to break that down a little bit, if you go back to the start, this advert, really I just wanted to play around and have a bit of fun with. This being the first time I've done this piece of work, I want to try and explore with different animation styles and different ways of going about things. So the first one really was focused a lot on the graphics with all those particles coming out. The second one maybe had a little bit more of a message to it. I was quite pleased with my research on this one. And this one I was hoping to quite bluntly, I suppose, attack the advert itself in the most literal sense. So as you can see, you've got your advert for your phones, and it says "Pay as you go, still seriously serious," which is this seriously thing is a tagline they use a lot in the campaign. And it's got this little dog here, this little pug. So what I've done here is I've tried to focus on the little dog element and how I could play around and have fun with that. So to begin with, you'll see these kind of effects, which are all again tracked over in the same way. Track null, 3D camera tracker, flicker over the front of the billboard. The screen goes dead, then to come up with a message saying "signal lost, repairing connection," and it's just got the Three logo right there. Approaching this project, I've tried to think of different ways to not have any kind of copyright infringement or anger any companies or anything like that, and it was quite frankly impossible. So without kind of making up fictional companies and then animating those on and then animating over the animation, which I thought really kind of defeated the point of the anti-branding kind of culture jamming message I'm trying to put out. So there's quite a lot of blatant use of corporate logos and branding here, but that's just the way the project's gone. So it says "signal lost, repairing connection," which again I suppose is a bit of a jibe at when mobile phone networks go down. Perhaps if the network isn't as reliable in other places, I thought, what if you took that same principle and applied it to this billboard? So as we move through from that, you'll see the picture goes completely dead and then comes up with this bear. And the reason I've got the bear in here is because I want to have the idea of interference coming through from other signals, and in this case it is a grizzly bear, which I masked out from an old film. Go back, and then I literally just made a mask and just went through one frame at a time, which took a lot of time. And take the bear again. I've done this with all the different examples of the bear I've got were used with the same kind of process. Okay, it's back to our comp. So as you can see, the bear comes up, and then a very confused looking pug, and then the bear again. Again, it's all tracked on, and then this blood splatter, and then I've had to freeze. You'll notice this is literally a freeze frame here, but the reason that had to happen was because the clip, unfortunately, and it is my error, something I've learned, the clip is only 15 seconds long, whereas the animation I want is probably more like 17 or 18 seconds. I could have gone back and chopped bits out of the middle, but I thought the pace that it goes at is a pace I feel the audience will be able to understand, especially on perhaps a smartphone kind of size screen, if that's something they're looking at. That's something I took into account when doing the text as well. And what happens is it just has to freeze frame just so I can prolong my footage a little bit. And then as you'll see, it's got the same advert as before, but instead of the dog being there, now there's just this bloody patch and a collar left where the dog used to be, which I've done just by using different layers to mask out what was originally the dog. I've tried to colour match it so that actually, in theory, you shouldn't really be able to see it too easily, because I've layered over with loads of different gradients, but that is how I did it. Again, just tracking solids to it. So there is the end of the video, and then against the start. So you start with your nice little puppy, and then the end with not so much of a puppy. So that is really what I wanted to put across with regard to this billboard. Plenty of information on the other ones hopefully as well. Thanks. Okay, just a few loose ends to finish up in this video. I've completed all of my animations, so I'm just going to take you through this particular one, which is in fact the first one I was working on, which I explained briefly before, just to take you through all the different elements involved in it. So if I just go to the most active part of the animation, I suppose you could say, which is right near the end, where we've got everything going on, including the text. I've got my original film, as I stated earlier. And then as you can see, all the other layers are kind of added on top of that. So I stated earlier how I use the 3D camera and the track null to track everything. And then basically what I've done is I've built up an effect here with various layers working over the top of that. So I've got a pre-composition here, which involves mainly the kind of ice effects that I've been using, which I've called icy. So if we just turn the pre-comp on for that, you can see it's basically kind of an icicle kind of texture, and it's tracked and also masked onto the bus stop that I'm using, and then that really stays with us through until the point where it explodes. And that is a point that I'd like to touch upon, because at this stage where we lose the ice texture and it gives way to kind of the particle effects, there's an explosion outwards, and part of that is just a simple 2D effect, which is the shatter effect. And then also, as well as that, which is the thing that I especially like to draw attention to, is I have actually used particles as well. So you can see these triangles here flying out of the image are actually simulated particles on the Effect 3D particle world. So what I've done is I've made a triangular particle, matched it to the color of my original image, and then I've used that to give a bit more depth to the shatter effect. So as you track through it, it gives you more layers. Now, after layering all this up and also adding particles, which I'm quite familiar with now, I've worked with particles for quite a while. It got onto the stage of the text. You can see there's this very brief kind of lens flare here, which I've used to act as a transition between the phase of just the ice and the explosion. But as I was saying, if we move all the way through, you'll see there's all kind of text on the front and particles flying out. What I did with the particles was just create two different layers, one of which had small particles that would fly out almost like stars or little hotspots, and then also much larger particles which resembled more of a smoke kind of effect that again fly out from the billboard, and they are all tracked to the image as well, so they all move with the movement of the camera as I did that handheld shot. Here you can see there's the text that I've done in Element 3D that says, "Do you seriously need to pay for a new phone?" The logic behind this choice of text was over here. It says, "A seriously great range of pay-as-you-go phones" was the original text on the advert. So what I've tried to do here is really kind of parody and mock the advert by bringing out the words seriously and pay as shown on the original advert, and just put them into this nice 3D effect that moves with the camera and works along with it. So I think that really gives a nice idea of my 3D After Effects skills that I tried to put into effect here. I could go through in much more detail into the various different layers I've got. It's quite a well layered comp, I suppose you could say. But really, I think that does give you the idea. You know, I've made various pre-composites to add onto this to give it a nice rich feel. All of it again is tracked back to this null layer, so that it all works kind of diegetically within After Effects, and that really is the basis of how I've built up the effect over time. So that being said, the next stage to move on to is Facebook here. No, no, of course not. It's actually Adobe Premiere Pro, which is what I did my final edit on for the final video. You'll notice on this video there's varying interesting topics related to the digital branding kind of concept, the kind of anti-corporate, anti-brand 3. I believe it was set on 5-second intervals, so every 5 seconds there's a new image. I started off just on my road at my house, so I think you can just about make out that's my front door there with my good friend William Gilligan standing outside of it. And as we move through, it goes from Tesco's, which is just where we went to get some grub for the shoot, and then works towards the first billboard location. Now, when I initially filmed the billboards, I didn't film them in the same order that you see them in the video. The order of the video is quite literally the route that we walked to visit them all. So if you can imagine that even though this animation comes up first, it isn't necessarily the first one I filmed. But as I've touched on in my blog, this is really one of my favourite animations, because even though it isn't necessarily the most impressive piece of After Effects work, I really like the way that it shifts between TSB and Lloyd's TSB, and I don't think that people necessarily make the connection between TSB trying to market itself for this new brand as a new bank, and Lloyd's TSB, which obviously is a more well-established name throughout the past few years, but has also been a relatively controversial one, of course, with the 2008 banking buyouts. Just to really give an idea of what I wanted with this final video, what was important to me was to make something that was relatively punchy, quick, and would efficiently give the viewer an idea of what my project was all about. So I've gone for quite a realistic, I wouldn't say documentary style, but I would definitely say realistic style. You can see here in the time lapse, you can see me using the camera that I use for the rest of the shots. So there's no pretense of fiction or a storyline. It is quite literally what I'm doing as I go through it. So you see it goes from the time lapse of me just about to put this sticker on to actual DSLR footage of me placing down these stickers, which obviously are quite central to the campaign. I did this project. I did the filming of this project, I should say, with my friend Andrew Davenport, who I know is actually very competent on a DSLR camera. So I knew that I had the opportunity to put the stickers on myself and have him film it, and I knew he would do a good job, as he's very adept with all the kind of ISO settings and how best to frame it and all that kind of stuff. And then also I could take over the DSLR to film board just for this final bit of shoot. I think it gave quite a nice kind of guerrilla feel to the footage, and I'm really panned out quite nicely in that respect. I won't go into too much detail on the After Effects here, because as I say, this is really all just about the final video and how I wanted to present. I think I've touched before on this advert how to begin with. It has a little pug here, and then it animates through as if the signal is being interrupted, which is a slight kind of jibe at 3, because they have had issues with poor signal and poor customer support in the past. And then it moves through to the stage where the dog isn't there anymore, and you've just got this kind of collar left over with a bit of remains. And there's a repetition to this video, this final video, which is that it shows the animation. It shows the phone next to animation, and then it goes to another little bit of time lapse to the next location, which I thought was quite a nice little feature. As I said, I did it every 5 seconds, and that left me with about 1 minute and 20 seconds worth of footage, I think, from all of my time lapse. So that's just enough footage, I think, to just pop in between the little sections of After Effects and sticker placement there. So as you can see, it follows this kind of pattern of put this sticker down, scan it with the phone, make it obvious that the phone has picked up the signal and is playing the video, and then again it goes. I've decided to put the After Effects in full screen on this video just so you can really kind of appreciate what's going on. As I've again said in my blog and my presentation, this is in fact the same as my first animation, but I think it's a useful exercise in showing that you can take the same set of effects and apply them to multiple billboards in a relatively short time. As I said before, this really just follows the same pattern through until the point where I stop. I take the brightness of the time lapse straight down, and again it has this Twitter page that I mentioned earlier. It says video strictly for the purposes of non-profit education and activism. really just in kind of a last ditch attempt not to get sued, if I'm quite honest with you. And the video is of course just an educational exercise at this stage. I have plans for the future to perhaps commercialize the idea of video placed next to the place that the audience might be viewing it. So maybe you could just do little short sequences next to a bus stop that people are waiting at. Perhaps you could be waiting at a bus stop, scan the code, and you see a short kind of scenario played out in your environment. But as I say, for right now, it's just for the purposes of non-profit education and activism. Finish off with digital vandalism again, just because, as I said earlier, it's really important to kind of drum in that concept of what the brand name is called. And also, I want people to say, if they've in any way interacted with this, they've seen a code and they've decided to scan it, I want them to be able to say, I've seen this thing called digital vandalism, which I think is quite a catchy name in itself. It's something that I did a bit of research to see if there are many things copying it, and admittedly there are one or two over in the States who have a website. I think there's a website for a photographer who's used that kind of slogan, but generally speaking, digital vandalism is quite unique kind of tagline. So if people use this and have a go with it, I want them to be able to remember and to be able to say, I saw this thing called digital vandalism, I've got the Twitter, and then hopefully that'll be how it spreads and moves forward from there. So I think that's really given a good idea and encapsulated my final post-production process. I hope that in the earlier stages of the blog, I've outlined how exactly the development process moved on, because with this project more than any other, the development of the idea really shaped my final project. And I hope that between the blog, these videos and the animation, there's a rich idea of what the project was about and what it was moving towards. So thank you very much for checking out my specialist project video blog, and I look forward to presenting the final major project at the end of the year.